The modern person, the bugman if you will, is obsessed with transcending the limitations of their mortal human form. They will take extreme measures to look young forever, to be young forever. They are running from old age and death as fast as they can. And it's very clear to see, especially from the rich people, that the faster you run, the more morally depraved you end up becoming.
Okay, let's talk about this facial that you're obsessed with. Explain what it is.
Well, it's this way in which one forces through microneedling.
What are you pushing into the skin?
Well, you push in whatever the facialist would like to insert into your pores.
But what is it?
It is an extraction from a piece of skin that came from a young person far, far away, and they somehow figured out how to extract.
It's foreskin from a Korean baby.
But of course, the lowly bugman, as well as the hyper-rich elite who want to cheat death and will go so far as to become a literal vampire to do it, are running from something that's not just specifically death, but more of what they are afraid will happen after. So, they wish to transcend the limitations of our mortal forms. And I don't think it's uncommon these days for the average person to look forward to the possibilities of maybe melding their own consciousness with AI to become smarter, transferring their brains into a robot body in order to live longer, more physically advanced lives, maybe downloading their entire brain to a supercomputer in order to live out a fantasy life in a world of your choosing, which all the scientists are promising is right off the horizon. But all of this is, and of course I don't say this lightly, retarded. And to be frank, very satanic. I can maybe understand a certain desire to be better than you are, to become like a god. It is a desire literally as old as time. But I can't help but remember that the last time we tried that, it didn't go so well. It's almost as if the very first story of humanity is telling us not to do that. Now, whether any of that nonsense is theoretically possible is beyond the point. It's all a pipe dream, because even if someone invented this technology to make you immortal or unbelievably intelligent, guess what? It doesn't matter, because they're not going to give it to you. We live in a world where insulin, something that you cannot live without if you're diabetic, only costs a couple dollars to make, but sells for several $100s. Listen to me, bud. They don't care about you. If anything, best case scenario from this technology is we all end up as techno slaves working in the lithium mines. Worst case scenario, we're all dead. Which, considering the best case scenario, might not be the worst case scenario. But anywho, here's the deal, Chief. There is no brain downloading. There is no immortal robot bodies. There is no magical potion that's going to save you from the inevitable. Your time here is limited, and you probably don't have as much as you think. In the last few hundred years, we have seen the human life expectancy more than double, which I think anyone focusing on solely the superficial level of analysis would agree that's a good thing. There's nothing wrong with optimizing your health in a natural way in order to live a longer, healthier life. But in the last couple years, we have seen our life expectancy gains taper off a bit, despite our constant improvements in medical and life-saving technology. Despite our continuous growing understanding of the ins and outs of the human body, the gains have begun to slow and have even gone negative. So I'm gonna call it right now, completely discounting any fancy flu or cold dark winter or nuclear holocaust, which might not be possible because honestly nukes might not be real. That's a topic for another time though. Discounting all of those things and just looking at the environment that we inhabit on a day-to-day basis, we have reached the diminishing return point for technology. We have reached the point where the world we live in is now more hostile to health and wellness because of the things we've created. There is plastic in the food. There is plastic in the water. There is plastic in the air. There is plastic in the placentas of pregnant women, and possibly, based on rodent studies, inside our brains. I've said it before and I'll say it again. Every single thing invented in the last 50 years is actively trying to kill you and make you infertile, without exception. Don't turn your back on the smart toaster. It is simply waiting for an opportunity. As it stands right now, the top 10 causes of death are lifestyle related plus suicide, which means that in one way or another, they are all essentially self-inflicted. And if that trend continues, then the statistical life expectancy is going to keep dropping. And the best part about this toxic environment we've created for ourselves is even if you want to be healthy and are actively trying to be healthy and are actively avoiding or otherwise not inflicting upon yourself these lifestyle-related illnesses, the environment itself is always ambiently killing you and trying its best to take an irreparable toll on you, which it probably already has. The poison is everywhere. No matter how hard you try, you're not going to be able to avoid it. That doesn't mean you shouldn't try, and that doesn't mean you can't make some serious improvements, but the point is, living to the ripe, statistically expected age of 78.79 years is not guaranteed. Again, your time is limited. So the question is, what are you actually doing that's worthwhile? See, the question that I would pose to anyone who suggests that they would want to live forever is, what the hell are you actually going to do with all of that time? And you can throw out all these grand, amazing things you think you would do, but all I need to do to know what your real answer is look at how you are already spending your precious, limited time. And if we take what the average person does and extend that into the future forever, what does that look like? Watching The Office over and over again for eternity? Like if you walked up to someone scrolling their phone on a park bench and said, boom, you will now live forever, what are they going to do? Jump up and go live their best life? No, because they already have a very finite one with limited time, and they still don't seem to be very keen to actually live it instead of just sleepwalking through it. So the question is, what do you want to do? What do you want to leave behind besides video game high scores and Netflix watch time? You might have a laundry list of things, but guess what? You're probably not going to get to all of them. At the very least, you could pick one and go do it. For example, I have a vague list of creative things that I need to get out of my head before I take the forever nap. This video vaguely being on that list. So kind of you to join me. But you have the time to do something, so you might as well do something with that time. And if you say that you don't have the time, that's not a statement about reality. That's an opinion. It's an insight to how you view and value your time. And just like I say about the gym, which is always comparable to everything, you don't have the time unless you make it. But think about it. What exactly would be the utility to living forever? Experiencing temporary material pleasures forever? Sitting around getting micro hits of dopamine forever? See, you could make the legitimate observation that life itself is characterized by suffering. But if you believe, like I do, that we all choose to be here, but you also wanted to be cynical about it, maybe you could say this is all just one big display of masochism. Even so, is that not still better than being bored? Is that not still better than nothing? Here's a question. Would you rather live in the most sad, terrible, punishing time in human history and die a premature, sad death as a child from some terrible, incurable disease, or sit in a white void for 80 years or eternity, pick your time frame, and just sit there? Just sit there. Is the former at the very least not more interesting? Is something at least better than nothing? Is losing a loved one sadly and prematurely better or worse than them not existing at all? Because if you really think that nothing is better than something, despite the good or bad nature of that something, then you are truly a waste of oxygen. Take any sad boy nihilist who thinks nothing matters and then, in a not advocating for violence kind of way, punch them in the face. All of a sudden, they have a short list of things that matter. Funny how that works, because they don't actually think nothing matters, they just want to pout. And most people who find the ability to think so negatively about existence feel this way because they really have nothing to live for besides the indulgence of material pleasures and the fact that punching in and out of work 5 days a week to afford their standard of living is less painful than the alternative. Besides that, they have no greater meaning. Or maybe they do have a greater meaning, but that greater meaning is just looking forward to retirement. Imagine living your whole life looking forward to the end of it. Dude, that's brutal. I would 100%, without a doubt, develop a self-destructive addiction just to entertain myself. Maybe that's what's going on. Now, all of this said, I'm not trying to say that you can't enjoy things, that you must always be moving or working on something, that you can't take a break and relax, but you can't have your only motivation for getting up and doing what you need to do every day is that after 8 hours of work, you get to go home and go back to doing nothing. You need something to do it for, because no matter how dirty or lowly someone might perceive what you do to be, it doesn't matter as long as you have a reason to do it. Now, what do you think is more valuable? A short life full of meaning or an eternity of temporary pleasures? Just imagine how numb you would feel after a week of purely doing nothing of substance. Watching TV, scrolling your phone, eating whatever junk food you have sitting around, and then extend that into the future forever. To me, that sounds like hell. I would much rather push a giant boulder up a hill for eternity, because at the very least I'd be jacked. And I would much rather spend eternity chiseled putting in work than as some blob sitting around doing nothing. Your time is just as valuable as you make it. There are people who have done more in a single month than others have done in an entire lifetime. So the question is, do you want to stay alive or do you want to live? Because you truly cannot live unless you may die. And as always, since your time is so precious, thank you very much for spending it with me. Tossed in the riptide, lost in the pixel life, nothing looking forward, but maybe the longest night staring at the blank screen. Watch till your eyes are fried, no effort to fix it. You're wasting your borrowed